and destiny!
To England!
To England! For Valhalla!
Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a great game, bogged down with too many systems and a story that suffers from its open world. If its gameplay were streamlined, its content edited, and story more focused, it could have been one of my favorite games of 2020. As it stands now, it's easy for me to recommend Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but with the warning that it's a commitment of time that will prevent many players from seeing its ending. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the 12th installment in the mainline Assassin's Creed games. Developed by Ubisoft Montreal, it was released in 2020, where it became an instant success, allegedly generating Ubisoft over $1 billion in revenue. I've been a fan of Assassin's Creed since the beginning, and like millions of other people, I picked up Valhalla at launch. I made it through the first hour of the game, saw the size of the map, and immediately set my controller down. I was burned out on open world games. Breath of the Wild, Ghost of Tsushima, Red Dead Redemption 2, it had been one massive open world after another, and as I cleared my backlog, I don't like moving on to another game before I finish the one before it. And I found the thought of beating Valhalla just too daunting of a task. So I set down my controller with the intention of picking it back up when I was ready. 3 years later, and I was finally eager to jump back into my longship and raid England.
Oh, gods. I hate long speeches.
Only when you're not giving them.
I've always been impressed with how Ubisoft has been able to really nail an historical setting with the Assassin's Creed games. They have a talent for world building, of recreating a landscape that is visually stunning and feels alive. Regardless of how Valhalla may be bogged down by too many gameplay systems, a meandering story that lacks urgency, and a map littered with enough collectibles to drive a completionist mad, no one can argue that the world Ubisoft has created isn't impressive. Valhalla takes place in England, smack dab in the middle of the Viking Age. The dates don't really matter too much in Valhalla because the game plays fast and loose with history, but they do stay close to some of the major milestones of this time period. You play as Eivor, a young man or woman of the fictional Raven clan of Norway. After your parents are murdered, you are adopted into the family of the king, where you become brother or sister of Sigurd. Valhalla allows you to choose the gender of your character, playing as either a male or female Eivor. There are any limitations placed on you from your gender, allowing you to still romance the same characters. The voice actors for both are engaging, and they do a great job of conveying the tone of a Norse warrior. The canon choice is to let the animus decide, with the majority of the game played as the female version, with the male taking prominence in certain specific story sections whose purposes are revealed towards the end of the game. There's a reason why Ubisoft allowed the choice of one character's gender, rather than having two separate characters like they did in Odyssey. I won't go into mid or late game story spoilers, but the beginning section takes place in Norway. Eivor's parents are killed by Kjolve when he was a child, and the tutorial of Valhalla follows Eivor as they meet with King Harald, who is looking to unite Norway under a single ruler. In exchange for his help against Kjolve, Eivor's clan pledges their alliance to Harald. This is where the problem with the story begins. Take any basic story. A young man or woman, their parents are murdered by an evil villain when they were just a child. They grow up, they pick up their sword, they go on an adventure, and ultimately succeed in either obtaining justice or vengeance against the person who wronged them. Valhalla does all of that in the first couple hours, leaving the rest of the game feeling aimless and with no real big baddie or villain until the game is nearly over. Could have been a better narrative if Eivor's quest for vengeance took place over the entire game, and that chase to find and kill Kjolve had led him to go to England. Instead, Eivor gets what they want at the start of the game, and it's the unification of Norway that drives them to England to start a new home and forge alliances with neighbors for security. Each of the shires of England is a hub for story missions, where you pledge on a map in your home in Ravensthorpe, the settlement where you have founded, and can upgrade over the course of the game. You travel to each of these new areas, do some quests missions for the leader there, and then ultimately gain a new alliance. Then it's on to the next one where you start the entire process over again with a new group of characters. It makes for a meandering and aimless narrative that lacks really any sort of urgency. It also takes forever. By the time you are traveling to the later game shires, recurring characters from previous missions make a reappearance. But to you, it may have been 20 or 30 hours of gameplay since you last saw them, making it difficult at times to remember what happened. It also doesn't help that Ubisoft's commitment to setting means using historically accurate names. Get used to hearing Alfred, Aethelwulf, Aethelred, Halfdan, and a slew of other Anglo-Saxon and Danes names that can jumble together. Weaved throughout this Viking adventure is the meta plot of Assassin's Creed. Assassins, Templars, an ancient race of beings that predate humans and their struggle to survive a global catastrophe. All of these different threads still exist in Valhalla, further muddying the narrative. It's a problem that the Assassin's Creed games have had for a while. A lot of the meta plot is really interesting. You have the Isu and the Animus, the impending destruction of Earth, which is something that I personally would like to know more about. But what ends up happening in the game is you are immersed in the world and the characters in the Viking Age, when suddenly you're pulled out and placed into the modern world with a whole new cast of characters that you haven't seen since the previous entries years before. Good luck if you haven't read the wiki or played the last 12 games in the series. I've finished all the mainline Assassin's Creed games over the years, and I only kind of remember what's going on. It makes for a jarring experience, and I wish Ubisoft would just commit to a modern-day Assassin's Creed game to finish that story off and do away with any of the Animus parts. I know a lot of people will feel differently, that a lot of people enjoy this meta-narrative and the interesting things that take place, and I completely understand that. It's just my personal experience has been, I find it incredibly jarring.
Find the wolf-kissed. Find the mad one. Find me. And save us all from another death.
My experience with Valhalla's story was like this. The first 20 hours, I was loving the game. The next 20, I was like, please wrap things up. And the final 20 was just a slog. It's a great 30 to 40 hour game that stretched to double that for the sake of quantity over quality, when a tighter narrative would have served it better. And I don't think I'm alone in that feeling. When I get the Xbox achievement for completing the main story, it showed that only 20% of the players had gotten it. 80% of the people who played this game on Xbox didn't even finish the story. And Valhalla is available on PC through the Ubisoft Store and Steam, and it's also on PlayStation 5, but I don't think those numbers are going to change. Most people did not finish this game and probably will not finish the game if they try it. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is gorgeous. I played it on an Xbox Series X with the performance mode on, and it looked incredible. With only a few FPS drops when there were a lot of characters on screen or in a large city like London. There was a problem as I played with FPS continuing to drop. It had something to do with the fact that when you turn off the Xbox Series X, sometimes it saves state for quick load. If you don't restart it completely, those FPS drops can continue to worsen. But a quick reset, reloading the game from scratch, fixed that problem completely. The colors really pop. England is green and lush, Norway is cold and covered in snow, with mountains rising into the sky. The water effects when you're sailing, the character models when they speak and zoom in on their faces, everything looks fantastic. But like a lot of Ubisoft games, there are graphical glitches. Even after 3 years of patches, I had light shining through walls, textures that refused to load, textures that were in low res when you were really close to them, mouths that didn't move with the dialogue. But thankfully, all those problems and bugs were few and far between, and I could write them off as open world shenanigans.
and find him of if you have another one that you mistrust, still you want to profit from him.
There's nothing better than sailing in your longship and one of your crewmates starts up a song. Ubisoft has matched the music to the setting in their previous titles, and Valhalla is no exception. The voice acting is good for the most part, although several of the characters did sound tinny, as if they were speaking into a can or delivering their dialogue over the phone. It was only a few side characters, but it was noticeable during a main story mission. I played through the game as a male Eivor, and his voice was consistently good, quiet and reserved or loud and bombastic as the story demanded. But if you choose the female Eivor, not only is her voice actress incredible, but it makes Eivor feel even more aggressive. The same story, it's the same character, but subtle changes in the delivery of lines give the character an entirely different attitude and how they approach the story.
I see. Is this a question of honor?
It is.
Many winters ago, Kjotve broke an oath to our fathers. He betrayed a friendly peace and slaughtered many.
I understand. I see. Is this a question of honor?
It is. Many winters ago, Kjotve broke an oath to our fathers. He betrayed a friendly peace and slaughtered many.
I understand.
Attack! Attack for Halfdan! This is the last of them!
Gameplay is where Valhalla falters. It's an open-world RPG with melee and long-range combat, stealth, settlement building, and a massive map littered with collectibles. It has a skill tree so large you won't be able to fill it out during your playthrough. You have multiple abilities that you can attain from items in the world. There's horseback riding, sailing, raiding, the list just goes on. But are any of those systems quote-unquote good? Yes and no. Some of them work really well, but none of them are implemented perfectly. Valhalla is a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none sort of game. Ubisoft's design philosophy seems to be centered around more is better. The problem is, how many systems can you put in place before it breaks the proverbial camel's back? I'm not sure of the answer, but Valhalla broke that camel and kept on piling on more systems when the poor creature was already buried. The melee combat was basically light attack, dodge or parry, spam the heavy attack. Archery is completely overpowered. Headshots are easy to pull off with only a minimum amount of skill, and they do significantly more damage than any other attack in the game. Stealth, I found to be nearly useless. If an enemy is higher level than you, it requires a special skill to be purchased in your skill tree for the chance to instantly kill them. Otherwise, it only does a little bit more damage than a normal attack, and you end up alerting all the enemies around you anyway. But good luck sneaking into anywhere large. The enemies spot you easily. At most, I could get a couple kills with stealth until things went sideways, and I had to revert back to killing everything in sight. Thankfully, there weren't any instant fail missions that required stealth, or you to restart them from the beginning, which was so great compared to the past games. I remember you play the old ones, you'd be spotted by an enemy, level's over. You'd have to restart from the beginning. This one, you get caught, you just kill everything, you hide in the bush, you restart your stealth, you end up failing it again, you have to kill some more enemies, rinse and repeat. The RPG systems are confusing. I was never sure if a weapon or a piece of armor was better than another, so I always had to judge it by the item rarity color. Everything can be upgraded at the blacksmith in your town of Ravensthorpe, so I kept my starting Raven Clan armor that you're given at the beginning of the game throughout my entire playthrough. And then I used the two-handed sword that I found pretty early that I liked. I liked the swing radius of it, I liked the move set, so I just kept that and just kept upgrading it. When I would pick up a new weapon, I would look at the numbers, the attack numbers, but mostly it's like pretty much the same all the time, so I would just keep my two-handed sword. The skills are mostly just percentage upgrades, 2% to light attacks, or archery upgrades, or stealth damage upgrades, that kind of thing. You follow lines to the skill constellation tree, picking whatever's in line that leads you onto the next path. But there's no real logic to the choices. One tree will have stealth and melee and archery in it, just the same as all the others, and a lot of the abilities stack up. So I just ended up grabbing whatever boosted my archery, because that's how I built that particular one. But the three trees are matched to items in your inventory, which I thought was pretty cool. You have Raven, you have Wolf, and you have Bear, and depending on what items you have equipped, you could get bonuses based on what skills you picked during that path. Sprinkled within this skill tree is new abilities, like the one I talked about previously, that boosted your chance of killing high-level elite enemies instantly. But the entire skill tree is shrouded in this fog of war, so it really prevents you from planning your path of upgrades. So you just pick whatever, and then you hope that you're going to land in something that matches your playstyle. To their credit, Ubisoft does allow you to auto-allocate your points, and you can refund those points at any time to try a different path. I found the auto-allocation just kind of picked all three paths and just circled out from there, rather than follow one specific path based on your play style or the equipment you have. So you can go with that if you want. The main issue with Valhalla's gameplay comes from the open world itself. It's difficult to balance an engaging story with the freedom of a world where you can go anywhere at any time. Combine that with side missions and collectibles, Valhalla faces a problem that many open world games do. How do you allow a player to exclusively follow the main story missions while also providing a reward for those who choose to do the side content and pick up the collectibles without trivializing the difficulty of either the side content or the main story? If I want to just do the main story missions, which take about 60 hours by itself, I need to be able to do that without the game becoming horribly difficult or punishing me for not doing the extra content. But if I'm a player who wanted to complete everything, the main story is going to be a breeze if the reward's too high. It's a balance that Ubisoft just hasn't been able to achieve yet. Valhalla isn't a hard game. It can be challenging at times, but not punishingly so, even if you only do the main story missions. But the side content does have rewards that I don't need or care about. Going out of my way to complete a side mission or collect a trinket that's on the map will net me some crafting materials or an item, or just some silver, which is the game's in-game currency. The game isn't hard, so I don't really need any of those rewards to complete it. I've really only died a handful of times in Valhalla, and that was to the single most deadliest thing in this game, which is fire. I can fight an army of enemies no problem, but one jar of oil and a lit candle will cut down the strongest Viking warrior of the Raven clan. Let's talk about microtransactions. You can't really talk about a Ubisoft game without discussing them. Valhalla has a cash shop filled with not only cosmetics like new horses and things for your settlement, but DLC, weapons, armor, and a one-time bonus that doubles the XP and silver you gain. The only purpose of this one-time bonus I can think of is to shorten the length of the time you have to play Valhalla. Areas are restricted by a power level, and for some of the late game areas, it could mean grinding content until you're strong enough to beat that area. Origins and Odyssey both had something similar, and Valhalla follows that tradition. For a full-price AAA game that costs $80 today in Canada when it's not on sale, it's inexcusable that something like that exists. An argument can be made that you don't really need to buy it, that you can earn more than enough XP and silver in-game to buy whatever you need. But I can't help but think, if it's there, they must have designed the game around it. Otherwise, why would they put it in there? When I got to the end game of Valhalla, the final section of the Alliance map where I would be entering the, penultimate battle, I was about 100 levels too low for that area. I think the Shire was like 350 or 380 or something like that. And my Eivor was only like 250 or 280. So I was about 100 levels too low. I could probably do it because this game isn't super hard and you can change the difficulty at any time. But if I wanted it to be the recommended level and not change the difficulty, I would have to grind out side content to get an XP boost to boost my power level to there. Every level you gain 2 skill points. Your power level is based on how many skill points you put into the skill tree. So, you want to be level 380, you need that many skill points. So it took me about 10 hours of grinding side content and killing order members and completing missions and things like that to get to that level. And I'm sure I could have cut that down by at least half if I had paid for this booster.
I gift one of these secrets to you. A weapon for the finest warrior I know.
Despite its issues, I can recommend Assassin's Creed Valhalla to anyone willing to spend 60 to 80 hours in beating it. My only hope is that after Valhalla, Ubisoft takes a more moderate approach on their future Assassin's Creed games. One of the major complaints I've seen leveled against Valhalla is that it's too long. But it's not the length of the game that's the issue. I've played plenty of games that are longer. It's how they make use of that time. There are order members to be hunted down if you want to get one of the endings, which means finding clues out in the world and exploring to unveil their identities. There are strange quests and visions that show the ancient god Odin and the other lord Aesir. All these things you need to complete before you see additional endings. You take out some of the padding, trim the number of systems down, craft an engaging story that keeps you hooked from beginning to end, and Ubisoft will have created something memorable. Because what is here is great, is just too buried to see. Because as it stands now, I'm not sure how many players will actually finish the main story. And that's a shame because Valhalla is a game that deserves to be played, enjoyed, and finished by everyone who tries it. My recommendation is if you're looking to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla because you love the Assassin's Creed games or you're interested in the Viking Age, pick it up on sale. It's frequently on sale. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for additional content in the future.